name is Daniel, and this is episode 62 of the Engineering Success Podcast, the premier engineering careers podcast. I hope you guys are doing well today. We have an interesting episode for you guys. If you listened to the last episode, at the end of the last episode, I hinted that I had a big personal career update, and it's that I quit my job. Now, that is a topic that I ask a lot of people about, quitting a job. And I haven't had the opportunity to tell a story of my own yet until now. So, this is an episode basically talking about. I'm going to be interviewed by Luke Callahan, regular guest of the podcast. And he's going to be interviewing me about the things I thought about and the process that I went to when making the decision to quit my job and take a new job. What kind of things did I think about? What things did I consider? What was important to me? And what kind of questions did I ask to make myself comfortable with taking a new job? I will say that I have had a wonderful career with my now former employer, and I'm really grateful for my time there. So, this is definitely not an episode where I am bashing anybody or any companies. I have great feelings about all the companies that have been involved in this episode. You might hear some company names here, and remember that this is my opinion, my experience. It's not reflecting the opinions or the views of any of these employers, and I feel favorably about all of the people involved. So, I hope you enjoy this episode as much as I enjoyed filming it. Um, I guess before we get into the rest of the podcast, I need to give my shout outs to my top tier supporters. Shout out to John Ott and Leroy Jenkins. Thank you both so much for your support of the podcast. Your support enables me to pay for my website, www.engringsuccess.com, where you can view updates on all things engineering success. And if you want to contact me, you can contact me at daniel@engringsuccess.com. If you're interested in showing up on the podcast, you have a question for me, a topic you want me to talk about, or if you want to ask me more about what I went through when filming this episode of the podcast and going through my career transition, I'm happy to share more about that experience as well. Now, one of the things that about my career that you know about me is that I actually spent some time working out in the field. And if you know me from working out in the field or field work in general, you know that I have a habit of drinking too much coffee. Now, I'm a working dad. I work a traditional job during the day, and I have a daddy shift at night whenever my baby girl is having trouble sleeping. So it's natural for me to need some kind of pick me up during the day. Because let's face it, there's a lot of things in the world that are preventing us from being the most productive version of ourselves, and we could use whatever we can to try to be productive in the moment. That's why I was really excited when the folks at Magic Mind reached out to me to ask me to do their 7-day challenge for their mental performance shot, and I've continued taking Magic Mind since then. Magic Mind is a mental performance shot that gets you focused, mentally clear, motivated, and productive while reducing stress with mushroom nootropics and adaptogens, plus, yes, 100% of your daily vitamin C and D intake per bottle. Their formula is created with the input of a scientific advisory board, and each of their ingredients has been subjected to more than 200 scientific studies completed over more than the last 10 years. Magic Mind uses cognizant acetylcholine, the best nootropics on the market, and nano encapsulation technology, which helps you absorb those ingredients faster. Now, obviously, there's no quick fixes in life, so I've been taking Magic Mind shots for now the last few weeks, and I've noticed that I haven't had the same urge to get over my caffeine crash with yet another cup of coffee. In fact, I've gone up to the coffee pot much less than drinking Magic Mind. I've been equally productive, but now I've gone from 7 to maybe 1 cups of coffee every day. And I've enjoyed the taste too. It's absolutely delicious, and it's probably because they use the highest grade organic ceremonial grade maca and mushrooms organically grown here in the US of A in California. Now, if you listen to that and you like it, you have a limited offer that you can use now that gets you up to 48% off your first subscription or 20% off of one-time purchases with code DanielD20 at checkout. You can claim it at magicmind.com/DanielD. If you don't like it, well, this is what I like about Magic Mind. Let them know within 100 days and they'll refund you, no questions asked. You can also find them at your local Sprouts, Erewhon, and Central Market, but the best place to get this discount is at my link, magicmind.com/DanielD, and using my code DanielD20 at checkout. Well, again, this episode is sponsored by Magic Mind. Thank you, Magic Mind, for your support, and we'll get into the rest of the podcast right after this break.
Hello, everybody. This is episode whatever of the Engineering Success Podcast. We don't know when we're going to publish this one yet, but we're doing something a little bit different. I got my buddy Luke, friend of the pod. Say hi, Luke.
Hello.
Yeah, and we're doing an in-person interview. Very cool. I got some microphones. You can't see Luke's because he's just so fancy pants and with his black shirt. He knew what color to wear. But the shoe's going to be on the other foot today. I say that I'm not wearing shoes currently, but the shoe is going to be on the other foot today. I am not going to be interviewing. I'm going to be getting interviewed. So, Luke, tell it what you're going to be doing today.
Primarily just interviewing Daniel. He's got some life updates.
Yeah.
Maybe pick his brain on some things. Find it's a good opportunity to get some actual perspective, right?
Yeah.
So we talk about, making certain decisions and hypotheticals, and now we get the chance to say, hey, you went through it.
Yeah.
What was your experience? What kind of questions did you ask? What sort of things were you confronted with? So
yeah,
stuff like that.
Well, let's break it off though then. So in an earlier episode at the very end, I teased that I quit my job. I gave notice. I resigned from the employer that I interned with, and I worked with them for 5 years, and I absolutely loved working for them and great employer, but I did resign. And so I have a new job lined up, and Luke's going to ask me some questions about that process. So I won't take anything away from you. I'll let you ask the questions. I'm ready.
Perfect. Well, I guess first question, are you excited? Do you think it's a good move?
Yeah, man. I am so excited. I think it's a great move. When I look at my resume, I think that I've had some holes in my experience. I've worked on some projects, my degree is engineering, mechanical engineering, for those of you guys that don't know that. And I have not really worked as a mechanical engineer, much less on engineering projects, really. I have some project experience, and I've worked on EPC projects before, but this will be an opportunity for me to really dip my toes harder into engineering projects, which is just something it's so exciting for me. I'm excited for the office culture there. My office in Charlotte and my current employer, we do puzzles during the breaks. They do puzzles there too. So I walked in, I was like, my eyes lit. I was like, oh, we also do puzzles here? That's really exciting. So and I like the people that I've met that I'm going to work with. So it's something I'm going to be excited about. And there's a little bit more pay involved as well. So I'm excited about what that brings and how we can work towards some of our financial goals as well. So it's all exciting.
Good. Well, let's go back all the way to the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. So before you started this process, I don't think you had any interest in transitioning away from Zachary, right? For the most part, you were happy. The money was kind of there.
Yeah.
You like the culture, you like the company. When did you kind of start to see that kind of like that glass break moment?
It wasn't even whenever I started looking. Whenever I started looking, it was really as part of any employment relationship. You're always advocating for yourself, and I'm always advocating for myself to get promoted in title and promoted in compensation. That's just something that I'm always advocating for. And yeah, I'd say that Zachary has done a really good job. They've promoted me. They've given me a lot of promotions. They've given me financial promotions, title promotions. We were working on what my next one would be, and I was like, I'd like to get some data points on some maybe salaries that are reasonable for my experience and what titles that people think that my experience is attributable for. So I just kind of I didn't intensively apply for jobs, but I whenever I saw something on LinkedIn, or it's just LinkedIn, when I saw something that I thought was a fit, I was like, I'll just send it an application. And at first, I started out putting like some outrageous salary numbers, just numbers that I knew that weren't reasonable for me. And then I started toning it back into what I actually thought I was worth. And sure enough, as soon as I applied for this job with HDR at a salary point that I thought that I was worth, I got a bite. And the conversation went from there. But even then, going to my first conversation with them, I'm comfortable here. I like Zachary. I'm in a great role. I'm in a great position. I have great opportunities for upward mobility. I've been promoted. I've been training and I'm learning. So it wasn't one of those things where I was like, oh, I'm running away from something. There was no singular moment that I was like, oh, I got to run away from this. But, I was just trying to get some data points. I'd been with the same company for 5 years, and it was time to at least see for the first time what I was worth.
Yeah. I think you bring up a good point. So you mentioned, that kind of story was, hey, what is my market value?
Yeah.
Right. So like what would a company pay me if it wasn't Zachary? And I'm sure you're aware of kind of the idea that you should, some people preach the idea of switching companies every 2 or 3 years, and that's going to have the most, financial impact for your salary. What's kind of your take on that approach? How often do you think you should do it? When do you think should it be to the point where you're like, hey, I think I'm undervalued? Do you think it's just a good idea in general to kind of put some feelers out there and say, hey, what is somebody else that's my age, has my career experience? What are they worth? Am I getting underpaid?
Yeah.
Does this need to be a conversation, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it kind of just depends on, it's a cop-out answer, but it depends. It depends. I think everybody's circumstance is a little bit different. I think if you feel like you're underpaid, and there's ways to see that. You can look at BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics data for your industry and your region. You can look at Indeed, Glassdoor. If you feel like you're underpaid and you have comps, and there's also Reddit salary surveys for engineers. If you're not familiar with that, just search Reddit salary survey for engineers and it'll pop up. But if you see that you are out of market, especially if you've been if you knew it from the beginning going in, or if you've been at the same employer for, I'd say 2-3 years, and you're not averaging more than a 5% increase, then at a minimum you should definitely be looking for that. But everybody's circumstance is different. You place different values on different things. Some company may not be giving you as much raises now, but you might be in a point in your career where you're getting a lot of experience, and you feel like that's the right place, and you're making enough money to live, and that's okay. Maybe still look, but that's whenever it comes into, okay, I've looked. Is this something that I would actually leave for? So let's go back to your original question. When should people be looking? I'd say if you feel like you're underpaid, definitely be looking. And I'd say,
I agree.
If you haven't looked in 2 years, look. And if you haven't looked in 5 years, really look. And as for like changing employers, I mean, yeah, you are going to, in the short term, make more money whenever you hop from company to company, because they know they need to pay you more money to hire you. So as long as you're growing your skills along with that role progression, you're in a position where you believe you're ready for that next step up, and you're not getting it with your current employer. That's a good time to hop from one to another. You might do an up hop or a lateral hop, and then they promote you. There's just so much nuance to the situation. I wouldn't recommend a one size fits all approach to it. Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think money is such just a tunnel view vision of it, right? Because there's so many aspects of it, right? So, what happens if they had asked you to travel a lot? Well, you're a family man now, right?
Yeah,
so,
I'm a dad.
So you want to be home a lot more, right? Or maybe health benefits is a big thing for you, right?
Yep.
And some people that's a big deal. And so there's just so many different nuances of, okay, yeah, maybe the money's a little bit better, but what am I sacrificing here, right? Maybe there's a better work-life balance. Maybe they're like, they don't mind so much if you leave early on a Thursday or every day to pick up your daughter or whatever. But
and that was something I had to consider in this situation. I had some tenure with Zachary that it gave me a little bit more PTO than what I was going to take whenever I moved over to HDR, and that ended up being kind of the final domino to fall. It's a point of discussion that we had to go back and forth on pretty extensively for them to offer a solution within their policies that was acceptable to me, and I was doing a decent bit of travel in my current role, and I definitely have an appetite for a little bit less travel right now, which is funny because younger in my career, I wanted to travel all the time. And then the minute that I have a kid, they're like, we got you in this role. And if you want to travel, you can go do that.
Right.
This conversation.
And now it's like, no, I don't want to.
I don't want to go anymore.
Right.
Which is, no, that's not anybody's fault. That's just,
Yeah.
that's just the nature of how the cookie crumbles sometimes.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. So, as you mentioned, whenever you're kind of young in your career, there's not really a whole lot that you think about, right? So, whenever you get your first offer letter, primarily the only thing you really notice is the money, right? It's the salary. How much am I going to be making? Where am I going to be at, right? Is it affordable to live there, kind of thing? But as you get older, there are some things that kind of change and progress. And so, what are maybe some things that you didn't consider whenever you first looking in your career, right?
Yeah.
First job right out of school. Whereas some things that whenever you went into an interview or whenever you were talking to them about an offer, what are some of the things you're asking for, right? Is it more PTO? Is it, the benefits? Is it, the work-life balance? Is it the ability now we have work from home, right?
Yeah.
So what are some of those things that changed?
Yeah. I'd say that there are some very specific, detailed things that were things that I asked a lot of questions about. PTO, we talked about that. That was a really big one. What's the PTO arrangement? For the first time, when I came out of college, I didn't care about healthcare at all because I was under 26. I was still on my parents' insurance.
Right.
So I busted out the Excel spreadsheets and I was going line by line and looking at what the cost out of pocket would be for my family, and it's pretty good. I'm really excited about my new healthcare program. Actually, it's I mean, not that I'm coming from a bad one, but I'm excited to move into a new for the first time, get into a high deductible health plan and go into the HSA route. It is something that I thought about for the first time. It actually makes sense, which is exciting for us. That's something I thought about. I spent a lot of time thinking about my commute, which was interesting.
Yeah.
Because I've done. I mean, I thought a little bit about my commute, and I picked where I lived in my first job relative to my commute. But this was interesting because I had a current commute and I'd have a new commute. And this new commute, I'm actually very excited to share that I'm actually going to be biking to work. So that's why it was something that
Wow.
I thought
that close, yeah.
4 miles. I got myself an electric bike. I'm careful. I'm going to rock my high vis vest from the construction site.
Right.
Just so that everybody sees me in the dusk light. But I thought about my commute more than I'd ever thought about it before. And I thought about the relationship with, I spent a lot of time asking questions about the team and how the team structure is. And I imagine I asked those questions as well, but I'm in a situation where I'm already in a great team. I have the people I interface with. I know who I interface with. I like the people I work with. I go to work every day and I'm really excited to go to work every day. And I was like, okay, if I'm going to leave this situation where I work with phenomenal people that I absolutely love going to work every day, I better be going to a place where people like each other too.
Right.
And I got comfortable that people like going to work as well. And then I think the last thing, and I thought about this, I've always thought about this from the very beginning, but it's something that I had to think about differently was, okay, what's the upward mobility from this role? And I've always had that mentality. I've always been asking what the upward mobility from this role is, but this time it was like a thing where I said, hey, this is what I already see for myself on my current path. If I do not leave Zachary, this is what I see for myself. And I have advocates. I have people that speak out for me, people that know my work product, and that will help me in the long term get to my career goals, which is I want to be impacting profit and loss, making big decisions to impact the bottom line of the business. And I was upfront about that with the people at HDR. I was like, that is my long-term career aspiration. And I am in a position where I think I can get there. What is this programs that you have in place here that can also contribute to that goal? And then they were able to make me comfortable around that as well. But it was similar questions in the sense of, okay, what's the future look like? But it was more specific. Yeah, right. Which is more specific than it's ever been before, which was interesting.
Yeah. And I think, you get, for instance, like you get a mechanical engineering degree, and there's so many industries, right? And I mean, just off the jump right out of school, there's aerospace and there's construction, and then there's, design and, all these different nuances or all these different sort of industries that you can kind of jump into that you can't pinpoint, okay, I want to go into like the aerospace world, but do I want to go into like the manufacturing? Do I want to be a part of like the R&D team on the manufacturing side or, and there's so many doors that you have open whenever you come out with an engineering degree that you're like, you don't know where to go. But now, 5 years in the future, you get to say, hey, this is kind of the career path. This is what I'm interested in.
Yeah.
This is where I want to go. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's one of those things where I kind of have reached that point in my career where I know what I'm doing. I like what I'm doing. I'm done it. I know I like it. So I want to understand what the scope of that's kind of leading into the question. I just spent a lot of time asking about the mechanics and the scope of the role. And I've always asked that. I asked that when I was first applying for a job because I Googled it and they said, oh yeah, ask about what the day-to-day is like. And I was like, what's the day-to-day like? Now, this time it was, okay, so how do I interface with this? How do I interface with that? How does this team support me? How does this team support me? What procedures are in place to help me achieve X? I need to know, in this role, I know I need to get X, Y, Z done. What processes are already in place that help me get that done? What kind of tools do you have that will enable me to do a good job? Right. So it was just a different cadence of questions. And then it's interesting because I got to the end of the interview and I asked them, so is there anything else that you need to know about me that would give you the confidence to give me a job offer? And by the time we were done, the guy who would be the director that I'm a report up to, he's like, no, I know what you've done. I've looked at your resume, the questions you've asked, back your resume. You've asked the questions that make me feel confident that you know the scope of the role and what you need to do to be successful. So no, I don't have any questions for you, really. Those types of questions inspired the confidence in them that they move fast. I was I was honestly hoping for it to move a lot slower because I had some vacations planned.
Yeah.
But yeah, they moved so much faster, and it was kind of refreshing.
Yeah. I always find that a little odd, right? As that you would think, more senior level position, or you kind of get higher up, but you think the process would be so much slower. But I guess whenever you're competing, you may be the only one competing for the role, right? And so it's like, hey, do we like this guy or not? Do we keep looking? Or you may be competing against 2 or 3 as opposed to, I know whenever we applied for our internship, how many people did they say applied? Right. And so, yeah. So you're picking 20 out of 2,000. And so you've got 2,000 people that you have to go through, right?
Yeah.
So,
I'll chime in here real quick. Actually, the way it went down is that I applied for a position that was posted. I think it was like one step longer than LinkedIn Easy Apply. I think I filled in the form. I didn't write a cover letter. I don't think I wrote maybe I wrote a cover letter. Maybe I don't know. But anyways, I plopped in my resume and I hardly filled out anything in this online form. It was super easy. They get back to me in a week. They say, hey, you're overqualified for the position you applied for, but we'd like to have coffee with you. Within a week of having coffee, they had a new requisition up for a new position. I was the first applicant to it, right. And they hired me. And I mean, they could have, honestly, they could have done that whole process in about 2 weeks. I was the reason why I was slowed down. So they went from just me firing off a quick little, I'm at home sitting in bed, or off an application to 2 weeks later, next thing you know, I'm contemplating, oh my gosh, am I going to quit a job?
Yeah. Yeah. Sometimes you got to be ready for that, right?
Yeah, I was not. And I eventually got there. I got there, but it was like, oh, you may be wondering how I got myself in this situation.
Yeah. An old, I guess, project manager of mine, he made a comment, which is somewhat relatable to a couple of different positions, but he said, if you're going to go in and negotiate for more money or whatever, and you're going to bargain your position, right? It's going to say, if you don't give it to me, I'm going to leave. Well, you better be ready to leave, right? Because they may say no. And so I guess it's kind of a similar situation, right? You applied, you have to have some expectation you might get it. So
yeah. Let's talk about that other question, though. I think that you kind of still leading me into a question, and I'll ask it to myself. Did I bargain?
Yeah, was there some negotiations, right? Was there some, did you, well, I guess, we'll get a little bit more detailed. So what was that process as far as negotiating with both I guess your future employer, right? As well as your current employer, right? So maybe you went to your current employer before you started looking and you said, hey, I'm wanting more money. I think I'm below market value, my salary or whatever.
Yeah.
Then maybe you started looking and then you get an offer and then you kind of, do you go back to your current employer and say, hey, I was given an offer. I'd like to give you the chance to, kind of negotiate our terms or move the process along. Maybe you're in the kind of the midst of a promotion or something and you give them the chance, or maybe none of that happened. So like, what was your, situation?
Yeah. So I started the process with my current employer about 8 months ago.
Okay.
So I switched into a new role. I kept my title and I was just kept at the same level, but I did change my responsibilities. And I kind of communicated, hey, I understand if this is not going to be a thing that I'm going to get promoted out of now. I really need to be I need to be aware that what my timeline is, what my progression is from here. And I was told, hey, we'll come back 6 months and then we'll talk again and see where we're at. So I let the 6 months pass and I checked back in and we were kind of in the same spot. And I was like, okay, that's fine. Again, I've been promoted pretty regularly in my career. I've changed roles, responsibilities, and I'm making good money. I'm making enough money to support a family of 3 in a medium cost of living city, and we live comfortably. So not urgent. But the one thing I made pretty clear is that I need to know what the next thing is, though. I want to work towards a promotion to the next level of whatever. At all times, I want to know that from my position, there is a next position. At least at this stage of my career, there is a next position, because I'm not at a position where I want to be terminal in my career. I don't want to be in the spot that's my final spot. I want to know that there's a next level that I can get promoted to that's being thought about, contemplated. And I was like, hey, I really want to know what that is. And the answer wasn't there at that time. The commitment was made to think about that and what that would look like for me. And right around that same time is whenever I got a little bit more aggressive with applying for other jobs. And because I was like, okay, cool. This conversation has some momentum. This is a good time, because we were going through a lot. There's a lot of outside noise that was influencing why it was protracted, and none of that was anybody's fault. The reason why it was delayed was, in my opinion, reasonable. There's nothing wrong with what got delayed. We had there's a lot of other transitions beyond me going on, and I didn't want to monopolize the situation. So it's not, I didn't push the button because I didn't feel like I had to, and I didn't feel like it would have been appropriate for me to, really push up against that wall.
Right.
But, I made it clear that, hey, I do want to know what's next. And I want to know what the next, if there's a job classification that I can get promoted to next, what that title is, what the description is. I want to see that description so I can work towards achieving that. So that way then you and I can go hat in hand to the powers that be and say, hey, Daniel has gotten from here to here. We're ready to promote him here. And so that was really what I put into place a few months ago. And, a month or so passes, I get this offer. And then I'll be honest, the way that conversation went is it just, I could have then taken that and let the current employer know that I was doing that. But I still didn't know how I felt about this other company. This other offer, this other team. I just didn't know how I felt about it. And I did not want to be in a situation where I was starting that I just had some shaky transitions in the past before, and where my feelings and other people's feelings had gotten, at least in my view, hurt. But turns out in the grand scheme of things, it wasn't a big deal. I just didn't want to upset the apple carton unless I really knew that I was going to upset the apple carton.
Right.
And then I got to the point where I got an offer, and I was really pleased with the offer. And I'll be honest, I got to the point where I negotiated around PTO and that kind of stuff. But I got to the point where I was like, yeah, I'm going to take this offer. And I got myself, at that point, I convinced myself that I was going to leave. And at that point, there really wasn't anything that Zachary was going to do that they could offer that would get me to stay.
All right.
So at that point, I didn't give them a chance to counter, actually, and I did it out of respect for the time of the people involved, because I didn't want to be in a situation where they gave me a counter. And the reality is that Zachary could have and probably would have given me a counter that wouldn't have been good enough for me to stay in terms of role, title, responsibilities. It would have taken a lot of people, a lot of energy to make that happen. And even then, I probably still would have left.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want, these are the people that would have been involved in making that happen for me. I respect them. I care about them. I care about their time. I know they have a lot of other things going on right now. I did not want to be the person that exercised them and then left anyways. I feel like that would have just made the break even harder than it already was. And I know that a lot of people are like, well, at least give your employer the opportunity to counter. And I get it. And that, in many instances, I think that is the respectful thing to do if you really would like to stay. And for there's like 90 out of 100 reasons in my body why I want to stay. I love Zach. I cried when they wrote my 2-week notice. But I had gotten to the point where I had made it up in my mind that I was going to go. And I didn't want to put myself in a situation where it made that process even harder for myself and other people. So
Right.
I didn't ask for a return offer. My boss even said, hey, so what if we were to match? He asked me this. He said, this is a great question. And I think it's so thoughtful for him to ask it. And he explained why he asked it afterwards. Like, what if we were to match? Would you still go? And I said, I love it here. And I love the people I work with. But yeah, I'd still go. And he said, well, that is the right decision for you.
Yeah.
And I'm really happy for it. And that's what I needed to hear in that moment. And I was so anxious, nervous about what it would be like to go in to give my notice. And that was just such a calming, settling conversation. And I'm really grateful that
Right.
my boss had.
That's good. And I mean, I think that's indicative that you work with a good team.
Yeah,
Right.
great.
So
Amazing team.
maybe a bad boss or poor employer, they would have said, well, it doesn't really fit our timeline, you leaving right now. So, we're going to make this process harder for you, or we're going to do things that are going to slow you down, as opposed to saying, hey, he's making a decision for himself.
Yeah.
It's a good step in the right direction, or it's a step on his path to continue his career growth, and it's what's best for him. So
Yeah.
we're going to support him.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't always get that. So it's good that you did. So this was the first time, like outside of maybe like a high school job or a job that you had in college, something like that, right? I think they're aware that it's going to end. They know.
No, this was a different one. This is different. This wasn't at Zachary. This was the internship that I had before Zachary. I had a job that I worked during the school years.
Okay.
Yeah, and they knew that there was an end date. They did know there was an end date, but I did formally give them notice just to be professional
and go through the process.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I practiced. My brother is actually going to work there this summer. I'm really excited for him. This company, Texas Scenic Company, is just an amazing company. I learned so much there working under my boss Nathan and Joel. They're just phenomenal, and I got to practice being an employee as an engineer. Got to practice learning how to take good notes and how to be a good employee, good colleague. I got to practice asking for a raise for the first time, and that was such a great environment for me to try to do that. The second year that I worked for them, I got to practice getting noticed. It was just such a great job for me, and I learned so much about how to be a professional engineer there. So I have given notice before. But yes, you're right. This is the first time, as a real deal professional, I had to give notice.
Yeah, and sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah,
right. Change is always kind of nerve-wracking because you're aware of your current situation. You're happy in your current situation. kind of taking a gamble, right? Because like they may just put up kind of smoke and mirrors and make it seem like the company you're going to work for is great and that it's everything you want it to be, and they're, you know, giving you a big salary bump and all these benefits and all these things that you want to hear, right? And then you kind of get there and then it's draining and exhausting, and then all of a sudden you have all these extra responsibilities. So sometimes it's a little nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But what was that, I guess, you know, how do you prepare yourself for that? How do you prepare yourself, you know, for that conversation with your boss that's, hey, you know, I'm putting in my 2 weeks notice. What are maybe some things you need to say, or maybe some conversations that you can expect, right? Like you just kind of mentioned. And what are some things that you can just do to kind of mentally prepare yourself? Because it is anxious, right? It is, kind of a big moment. So what are some things?
So I think that one of the things that can make that go easier is you could be thoughtful about the people, because again, I care about the people I work with. So I came up with, I already take notes and I keep track of my responsibilities, but I actually kind of took some effort to expand that, to create a handover document that was really, basically I created README files in every single one of my working folders that explained, hey, what my work process is, where we're at in this process, and how we got there, and what we considered and what we hadn't considered. I centralized all of these notes into one Excel spreadsheet where you can see when we started this, what our deadline is, who my stakeholders are, who my teammates are, where the files are, and just detailed notes of how we had gotten to where we're gotten and how close we were going to finish on everything. So that was starting that conversation by telling the boss that I have this. That was probably relieving for him. And that was the prep that I did. The other prep I did was I was very thoughtful around my start date with my new employer, and picking a start date that I knew aligned really well with some major deadlines that I was going to complete. So I am in line to finish 2 major year-long efforts that I've been working on, and they're going to be done, completed, dusted right before I leave. And that was something that I emphasized as well whenever I was giving notice is, hey, these things, they should not be on your plate. And these are things that nobody else on my team really has any awareness of. So it was good to be thoughtful in that manner. And then whenever I got into the actual conversation, I practiced. When it comes to actual conversation, I practiced. I had some conversations with other friends that have given notice before, and I reflected on some words that my boss had given me in the past. Like he had told me that, you know, companies come and go, but your family is the most important thing. Always make the right decision for your family. He said that a long time ago whenever he was giving me random advice. And I was like, I remember that. I'm going to remember that. And it's great advice, the kind of advice that any manager should give their employees to make them feel empowered to make the best decisions for themselves and their family. I remembered that. And I also remembered that my boss is a very straightforward person. So when we started the conversation, I just said, I've taken a new job. I've got a new job offer. I'm going to take it. And this is, please consider this notice of my resignation. And that, it was, I got a new job offer. I'm going to take it. Please consider this the notice of my resignation. My last day will be on X. Yeah. That is how I started the conversation. I let him kind of take it in on his face, which, it's a shocking thing for any boss. And we had been talking about how we both had kind of a rough week leading up to that. I was like, hey, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to make your week any better. And then I said those things, and then I said, I'm going to take it in. And then I explained, this is not any reflection of how I feel about the company, about how I feel about you, and the job you've done. I love my job. I love what I do. I feel like, the company has done right by me. I just need to grow in certain areas, and I think that this role will allow me to do that. And they also offered me some compensation that I am really in favor of. And that was kind of it. And then we had a longer conversation after that. But really, I think the biggest thing is don't beat around the bush. If you start beating around the bush, they know it's coming. So just rip the Band-Aid off. Let it sit in. If you are thankful, let them know. If you're vindictive, maybe don't let them know. But just put on tell them what you did appreciate, what you did care about, and then let the conversation go from there.
Yeah. Well, it's not really a situation that you want to kind of that you can ease them into it without it becoming awkward, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, what would you do to kind of create that situation, right? Would you just kind of start having poor work performance? Would that be
No,
you
I don't think you ease them into it at all. I mean,
yeah.
it was a
So
shock. It was a shock for everybody involved. I mean, I bleed green. Everybody knows that I'm gung ho for Zachary, and
right.
I still am a massive advocate for Zachary. Zachary's a phenomenal company, doing some of the most impactful projects in America, and that is a really cool thing to be a part of. And I got to be a big part of that. And I'm always going to be an advocate for Zachary, but I had to rip the Band-Aid off. It was everybody was shocked, but turns out I gave 2 weeks notice. Turns out 2 weeks is the professional amount, and they were really appreciative of that. So that's the other big advice I have for people is no matter how much, unless you're like a senior director or senior VP, maybe, or if you know that there's a specific project deadline that's coming up and you're working towards a deadline and you know that your contract's gonna expire at a certain date, I feel like giving longer notice, especially whenever you don't have a start date in the bag or the ability to move your start date forward, I feel like it's only going to protract the process and make it even more painful when you leave. I mean, there's obviously educations for everything, but I say just give 2 weeks, give the 2-week notice, and they'll appreciate it. These companies have been around for a long time. They've survived turnover before. For the most part, most of us are not that important. People tell me I'm important, and I've been told I'm important my whole life, but I'm not that important. They're going to be just fine moving on and handling that transition. They've had to do it many times. So just give the 2 weeks. That's what I did, and I ripped the Band-Aid off. I just said, hey, out of nowhere, I'm resigning. 2 weeks notice. It was even harder telling some of my stakeholders. One of them was no, but then they're like, okay, we'll adjust, and that's the reality that they'll figure it out. They'll figure it out. They're big boys and gals.
And I think, especially in your industry and in your environment, leaving it ambiguous and leaving that door open to say, well, this is my 2 weeks, but if you need me to stay around longer, I will, right? Because then you just kind of get pulled back in, and then it's like, well, can you help us out do this thing, right? Can you take care of this one last thing for us? Can you do this? Can you do that? And then, you obviously work with people outside of Zachary, your stakeholders and other clients and whatever the deal is. And so now it's like, well, now you're too intertwined. And so now it's really hard to kind of pull yourself and untangle yourself from that.
Yeah.
And so, I agree. I think, it's best to just rip the Band-Aid off. You don't want to kind of beat around the bush or do anything that's going to try and ease them into that process. Just go ahead, rip the Band-Aid off, and then just say, hey, after 2 weeks, I'm going to be done. So maybe make a list. What things do I need to close out prior to leaving? What things do I need to review with somebody else?
Yeah.
Whatever that process may be.
Exactly. And that's what I did. Yeah. And it's going very smoothly so far. I got a few more days left, and then I'm, as of the date we're recording this, I got about a week left, and then I'm out.
Yeah. So let's talk about something other than work. I think we've kind of beat that dead horse. Let's talk about some of the impacts, maybe your personal life, or maybe what's going on in your personal life, right? So this, obviously, like, you moved to Charlotte. Now you're going to be, I guess you're going to be here longer than expected, because I think there was some plan was maybe you'd be in Charlotte. Your wife is currently getting a doctorate, right, at UNCC. And then was the plan originally to move back to San Antonio? Now it looks like maybe that's changing, or maybe it's going to be the same. I don't know, what's kind of, because that's kind of an aspect of it, right? So like whenever you take these career transitions, but you have to consider your personal life too. And so you have a kind of an idea of where you want your personal life to go. What are you driving for now?
Well, we've really liked Charlotte ever since we moved here. And this move definitely could potentially lock us into Charlotte a little bit more, which is something that we did consider whenever we made this move. I mean, then there are nuances of whenever Maddie gets out of her doctorate program about where she can get tenure track positions. We'll have to, if she wants to go that route, we'll kind of see, or if she wants to stay at home for another year for another kid. I don't know. We'll have to kind of cross that bridge whenever we get closer to it. But yeah, we're definitely operating at this point like we're trying to get settled in Charlotte. We go to church here in town that we love, and we're making friends through that. I got my buddy Luke that lives here in Charlotte that I enjoy hanging out with
whenever around.
Yeah, which is never. And then my buddy John, and shout out John and Britt, also here in Charlotte. That not the church, but yeah, no, we're having a good time. We have some friends coming into town. We're going to go out to the Smokies for Memorial Day weekend. Pretty excited about that. It's all good developments, man. It's gonna be really good. We're loving it, and it's really fun watching my kid grow older.
Yeah.
She's almost walking as of now, and she's babbling like crazy, crawling all over the place. I mean, dude, she's like a speed demon. You turn your head for 1 second,
she's gone. Right?
She's halfway across the room, and she's climbing up on something. So yeah, it's been good. Yeah.
Well, now that you've been here for a while, I'd like your take on kind of your experience. So whenever, I know obviously like you had Maddie with you, but you were diehard Texan, right?
Yeah.
Grew up in Dallas, Fort Worth, and then you interned in San Antonio, then you moved and lived in San Antonio for a little while, which isn't very far from Dallas, right? So you could potentially make a weekend trip to your parents or to Dallas if you wanted to. Then you moved to New Orleans.
Yep.
Right? But you were busy with work, and I don't know if you had much of an opportunity to really get meshed in with the community and then with the environment.
Decent enough. We had a lot of work, but we live in a really walkable part of town, so we have to see a lot of it. But yeah, Charlotte. Yeah.
Yeah. And so now you moved to Charlotte, right? So you don't really know anybody here, and now you've, of course, the people that you originally worked with, they're from here or whatever, but now you're kind of transitioning into, a new workplace. So how do you go about, kind of getting involved and not feeling like you've moved here and now you're isolated, right? Now you're away from everybody. Now you're away from your old friends. How do you get involved and, create a new community, if you will?
Well, I think you look to your passions, and you're trying to find communities of people that share those passions. So for us, our faith is important to us, and finding a faith community that aligns with our beliefs was really important to us, and we found one. And good thing is that community does a really good job of also trying to connect the people in the community. So we're part of a young adults group within our church community that gets together on a monthly basis, and we've also made some closer friends within that group that we want to hang out one-on-one with, which is just fun. And so that's one way that we've immersed ourselves, and then also just remembering to get out of the house. And so we've been asking our coworkers, friends, colleagues, people in the mommy groups in town for advice on day trips and to do in and around town. So last weekend for Mother's Day, we went to a farm. We've also heard that there's some places nearby we can go strawberry picking. So just kind of identifying with the community and just interacting with strangers. Yeah. It makes you feel a lot less isolated when you get to interact with strangers. And then, I was going to say something else. And then also making time, to go back and visit family. So we budgeted line items in our budget for the dog sitters and the flights. So we're going back to see our family at least once every few months.
That's good.
Yeah. So we're keeping our connect, or at least they're coming to us. We're going back. We're keeping that connection. We're going back to Texas for baby E's birthday, which is gonna be fun. And so we're keeping the connection to the past, but also immersing ourselves and hitting it on both ends with trying to avoid the isolation. Also, props to Maddie. Maddie's done a great job. She's joined multiple mother groups that she goes out and on a weekly basis gets that socialization, so she's not isolated just between school and work. She also gets to go hang out with the other moms and other babies, which is good. And we've met other families through that as well. So we're working really hard, being very intentional about trying to not be isolated.
Yeah, which I think nowadays is a little challenging, right?
Yeah.
Because first, there's so many avenues that you can use just to kind of plug back in with people that are far away, which, I mean, it's good, right? But at the same time, it's like, okay, it keeps kind of pulling you back. But I think, engineers are kind of naturally introverted a lot of times. And so sometimes it's hard for you to, go try a new gym, go try a new church.
Yeah.
and have to sit there with people that you don't know.
Yeah.
And all of them, of course, they're all going to be very friendly and welcoming, but
Yeah.
sometimes it's just a little nerve wracking. So it's kind of like, how's the best way to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. And so, for example, my brother, he's going to go to be San Antonio this summer, and I'm trying to think of different ways that if I were to give him advice on how to feel connected that summer, because it's a city that he doesn't really have his own friends in. I've connected him to my friends, but if I were to give him advice, I'd say, hey, what do you enjoy? Do you enjoy running? Go run. Do you enjoy playing? If you enjoyed playing tabletop games, go play D&D with people at the card shop. If you enjoy working out, go to the gym. Go to a gym that has group classes or something like that. Go on dates. Hop on Tinder or Hinge or whatever. Go on, talk to people in the community. Go on dates. Go do fun things. Go do different events around town with other people, with people with strangers, with people you want to get to know. You never know what will come out of that. So that's the advice I'd give to him. If you're single, go on dates. If you're not single, then go on double dates. But I think that's a good way to explore people and keep a good pulse on what kind of events, whether it be cultural events, community events that are going on that are free, and just show up and meet people. But I sympathize with anybody that's just moving to a new city by themselves. That's hard. I haven't had to do that, so I sympathize with people in that.
Yeah, it is a little bit difficult, I know, because yeah, I did, but you just kind of got to get plugged in, I guess, right? So, but find those things that you're interested in, because a lot of times if you are doing things that you're interested in, right? So say you're a big football fan, a lot of football fans will probably have other similarities or other interests that you also share with them. Maybe they're active, maybe they come from an athletic background. Okay, so maybe they're either in the gym or they like to hike, and then, you meet their friends, and then their friends do all these things, and then you can go out and be social, right? So just taking that step and going out and being adventurous.
Yeah, and that's something that just comes along with taking that new job and having a plan in a way that a lot of people have to move for these new jobs, and having a plan in a way to get yourself comfortable with dealing with that aspect of the change will then help make those other parts of the transition easier for you as well. So it's a good thing to think about, and I appreciate you asking about it.
Yeah, of course. So I think the last thing I'm going to finish off on, it's going to be about the podcast. Any updates about the podcast? Any exciting news? I've seen you're talking to a lot of people now.
Yeah.
I keep updated, and it seems like every week you're interviewing a new person that has these big titles, CEOs or recruiters or, some sort of prestigious, or I believe somebody had transitioned from engineering to finance. You're kind of hitting everything, right?
Yeah. So right now I'm not, it's kind of like a word of mouth thing when it comes to pick and guess. They kind of start finding their way to me. I've gotten to a point where I've actually had some guests that have pitched themselves to me that I actually haven't brought onto the podcast yet.
Yeah.
Because it's not what I'm focusing on right now. I've had some really good recruiters and people with that kind of experience and career advisors in general that have offered their time on the podcast. I'm not quite ready for that right now. I'm still focusing mostly on engineers that have made a transition. Though some of you that may have listened to episode 4 of the podcast, you may be thinking, okay, well, what is this episode about? A guy that got an accounting master's? Yeah, okay. I didn't know what I was doing back then, right? All right, but now I know. Or the guy that got into med school. Sorry, Ryan, Dylan. I really appreciate your time on the podcast. We're leaving those episodes in the back catalog, but they're not related to engineering success. but yeah, so we're really focusing hard on engineering careers. We're really focusing hard on people that have made transitions. I've got a couple. I say I have about 4 or 5 that I've kind of had exploratory conversations with that are in the pipeline that we just haven't picked a date yet. We're going to keep on doing the mailbag episodes. I am still very active on Reddit. I've made a post on Reddit, and I've gotten about 8 students or early career engineers that I'm coaching right now through the process of for a job. So and that's something that I do for free. It's something that I volunteer my time for. I'll review your resume. If you have questions, if you have an interview coming up that you want to do a practice interview, I'll sit on the phone with you and ask you questions for 30 minutes and help you get through that process. I will volunteer my time to help you with your career transition. So that's another thing I'm doing. But yeah, Oh, and the other thing is that I did have my first run of sponsorships on the podcast. I did a 3-episode spot with the nootropic energy shot company called Magic Mind, and that's exciting. I'm hoping to grow that partnership with them. I think that there's a lot of synergies there, and they've been really great to work with. If they feel the same about me, then I'd love to stay on with them and pick up some more ad sponsors. And we're closing in on 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, so very excited about that too. Hopefully we can hit the monetization requirements on there as well. So
Awesome.
yeah. And then as always, I got support from my boys Leroy Jenkins and John Ott, who are my top tier supporters of the podcast, going strong for about a year, both of them right now. So we trying to grow the revenue streams as well. So all good development.
Well, I want to go back and hit on something that you kind of glazed over, which I want you to kind of expound upon. So you're offering, kind of some coaching services now, it sounds like. So what are some things that you feel comfortable offering, right? Because you're doing it free, and so you don't, and so you don't want to feel too responsible and get way too in over your head. But what are some things that you're offering and that you're willing to do? And then also, what are some ways that they can reach out to you? What are ways they get involved?
Yes, shoot me an email at daniel@engringsuccess.com, and we'll set up a time to talk on the phone and have a call, and I'll review your resume, give you some thoughts, some feedback. I'll sit down and talk to you about, okay, what kind of jobs are you trying to look for? Where are you at in your job search? How focused is your job search? Are you very specific, or are you just kind of looking for a job? Do you know what you want to do? Are you passionate about, or you're willing to try different things, and how to approach that? And if you have an interview coming up and you've never done a job interview before, I'll kind of run you through some of the most popular interview questions and give you some feedback on your answers, and just give you some general advice on how to prep for a job interview. And then if you're in the process of negotiating for a job offer, if you need somebody that just to have I have people that I shout out, Emma, Tucker, and Luke, you, and a bunch of other people that I went to as my go-to people at navigating this job transition. Shout out Jacob Hudson as well. But if you don't have that person, or you want another person in your corner, I'm more than happy to be that person in your corner. I can't promise high responsiveness. I will be as responsive as I can, but as my load goes up, I'm also navigating my own career transition right now, so it's not like I have all the time in the world. But I'll give you my time in the gaps when I have the chance, and it's something I'm passionate about, something I care about, and I'm more than happy to be an advocate for others. So my passion is engineering careers, so I'm happy to talk to people about theirs.
That's awesome. Well, I mean, obviously, if they plug in with you, it gives them an opportunity to really network, right? Yeah. So it sounds like you help people that are on the job hunt, if they're kind of open and looking for anything. Now you've connected with people, recruiters, and other sorts of things that you can kind of, hey, if you consider this, if you consider that, right? Yeah. And then, interview questions, interview prep, that sort of thing. And then also, it sounds like you'll also help them negotiate with an offer, maybe, or maybe not negotiate, but maybe review an offer and say, hey, is this a good deal, or am I?
Have you asked about this? Have you asked about that? Yeah.
You taking into account where you're living, maybe, right? And instead of salary, meet those expectations.
Exactly. And you made a good point that I didn't even mention. Yeah, I do have. I have a limited number of connections, but if there's a fit, then I'm always happy to refer somebody. Good people. I love to refer good people to good people. I'm not the most interconnected person in the engineering space, but I don't mind sending a referral here and there. And another way that I didn't mention this earlier. Another way people that could connect with us is through our Discord server. We have a Discord server for engineering success. People like Luke are in the server, and if you have questions and I'm not being responsive enough, or you just don't want to call me up directly, you can ask your questions. We have different servers for different topics: career negotiations, job applications, resumes, interview questions, all that. We have different servers. Even we have a private server for our top tier supporters, by the way, if you want to be a part of that. But yeah, we have private little channels in the server for, private channels and public channels in the server for all different types of discussions. And we have a bunch of engineers in there that'll chime in and give you some advice and their thoughts and perspectives. So if you want a little bit more close-knit group than maybe what you get on Reddit, then we have our own little group. We also have a subreddit, but that's not very active.
Yeah. But again, networking opportunity,
Yeah.
right? Because I know whenever I was, looking for internships coming out of school, I didn't have a whole lot of connections.
Yeah.
So it would have been really nice to just have one to say, hey, if you looked into this, have you tried this? Have
Yeah.
you reached out?
Yeah.
Maybe I have somebody that you can reach out to and I can speak, on your behalf and say, hey, good kid, and he's looking to get into this field. Can you help him out? Can you point him in the right direction kind of thing? So,
Exactly. That's what the podcast is about. It's about sharing that knowledge, experience, and from either people's career transitions or from just general advice. I mean, anything related to engineering careers. That's the point of the podcast, to provide that community, that narrative to help you influence making the best decision for your engineering career.
all right. That's awesome. So before we leave, I did want to ask you about one particular clip. It was a little bit because it just kind of, it felt kind of rubbed me the wrong way, I guess. So it was a review on, you talked about Charlie Kirk.
Yeah.
So he made a comment
Yeah.
that you can get an engineering degree in 18 months.
Yeah.
And I guess the clip that I watched, you didn't really talk about it a whole lot. So I want your honest opinion. If you go back, and you obviously you have the hindsight, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Charlie Kirk has an engineering degree.
No.
He may.
I don't think he even has a college degree.
Okay, yeah. So I think he has a little bit of a bad perspective.
College degree, but I don't know. But yeah, so you watched the clip. That means you didn't watch the whole episode. I gave my opinion. So this is the gotcha question. This is the gotcha question. Okay, my opinion is no. I don't think that you can get the full engineering degree in 18 months. I think that you can get an engineering technician degree. I think you can get a very pointed, engineering adjacent education, and you can do a lot of really good things with that. But I think the whole purpose of engineering school is to teach you how to think, teach you how to solve problems. Engineering school is not about just learning things and memorizing things. Engineering school is about learning how to be, giving yourself the tools to be an engineer. The one thing that really frustrated me about Charlie's statement was that he said, well, I mean, how many of those things do you actually use, that you learn? And I'm going to tell you right now, engineering school versus your job, 90% of the stuff you learn in engineering school, you're not going to use. But that's the point. That is the point. It gives you that foundation to then be an engineer. And there's a reason why ABET accreditation exists. There's a reason why we have professional engineering licensure and all these things in place, because what you can do as an engineer is really damn important. All right. People's lives are at stake. And there's entire teams of people that have a lot more education and knowledge about the engineering profession as a whole. They set up the ABET standards. They set up the accreditation. They set up the licensure requirements. I'm going to go with those people over Charlie. Now, would I agree that colleges have taken the fact that the government has subsidized student loans and ran with that and gotten more expensive, making a lot more amenities in school and trying to do a lot of other things to help people be more holistic people? I'd say yeah. And is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? I'm not going to speak on a college and trying to make people better people from all aspects. I think that's a good aspirational goal. Now, when I say that college has gotten way out of reach and how expensive it is, yeah, and I feel bad for people that are trying to navigate that and make that investment. But I'm not going to say that an engineering degree can be done at 18.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah.
What's
your thought?
Oh, I don't think so. And I mean, so kind of going back to what you said, right? So there are maybe 90% of what you learn you won't use actually in the field, right? But again, like we said, so you come out of school with an engineering degree, you open so many avenues, right? You open so many doors, right? And so I know, for instance, there used to be at LSU, they offered a very, very specific kind of engineering. It was called petrochemical engineering or petroleum engineering, right? Well, that kind of pinpointed you to, okay, if I get this degree, essentially all I can work for is an oil and gas company, right? Or at a refinery or something like that. Well, what happened whenever, gas prices went, and then suddenly that industry, now you have a degree that's very niche and very catered towards that, industry, and now you can't get jobs. I feel like that would be the only way that you could, potentially get out of this like kind of 4-year expansive degree and kind of shorten it up to maybe 3 years or 2 years or something like that, it would have to be very, very specific, but that's kind of the downside.
Yeah, you're right. Versatility is kind of one of the inbuilt positives of the engineering degree.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you this, like, I took a class called engineering economics, or contained engineering economics, and people are like, what? That's not engineering design. That's not important. And some of the people in my engineering economics class, they thought it was stupid. They hated it. I'll tell you this. It was the last year of my career. It has been the most valuable class to my doing amortization, interest rates. We've been negotiating, trying to understand our rates and negotiating rate increases, understanding how the labor market's going to move. And that has been the focus of my job for the last year. So it turned out to be really important. So,
and there's so many things, I feel like. I mean, I know it happens a lot in construction, right?
Yeah.
So I have a mechanical engineering background. So primarily if, it's, some sort of pipe, fluid flow, some sort of heat analysis, something like that. That's kind of my background knowledge.
Nice.
But a lot of times I do things that involve concrete, right? So I kind of need to understand concrete a little bit, or electrical, right? So if we're putting in a pump or a motor or something like that, okay, well, I need to understand, a little bit of the electrical aspect of it. And is this feasible? Is this possible? What sort of, kind of control aspects, instrumentation and controls can you work with? So there's so many things that, like, yes, you don't use it in every day, but there's so many times where it would be beneficial just to have that knowledge and just create a well-rounded engineer and a well-rounded person. So
I agree wholeheartedly. It's funny. I spent a lot of time 2 years ago dealing with cement mixes. I'm a mechanical engineer too, so you never know.
Yeah. So, but, well, I guess I need to go back, watch that whole episode, get your whole take on it.
Yeah. Wow. We heard it here first. Luke Callahan.
I've been busy. Okay. I work 7 days a week, 12 hours a day. I didn't have the time, but I will make sure now that I have a little bit of time to go back and watch it.
Yeah.
I just wanted to ask you those questions because I didn't get to see your whole response, but now I'll get to go back and watch it and see that we agree.
Yeah. So everybody go watch episode 60. I think it's 60 of the podcast.
I think so. Yeah.
60, and it's in the title of the episode. So you'll find. I had to use Charlie Kirk's name as clickbait. He's much more famous than I am.
Yes.
Yeah, big following. So I figured, put his name in the thumbnail, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and I just thought it was an outrageous take on his part.
Yeah, I think engineering was definitely the wrong example for him to try to use to make that point. I think everybody can agree that college has gotten just outrageously expensive, and I am all for people that advocate to make college more affordable and accessible, and I appreciate the intention there. I do appreciate that, and I think that's something that everybody across every side of every aisle will agree that we want to advocate for making college more affordable and accessible for everybody. Shorten the engineering program is not the way I'm going to do.
I don't think so.
All right. Well, thanks, Luke.
Thank you, Daniel. You've been a great host, I guess, and also a great interviewee.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, had a lot of fun. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for having me on. All right, guys. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed that, and we'll cut to some kind of outro where I talk to you. Say bye, but see you the next one.
All right, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed that interview of me as much as I enjoyed being interviewed by Luke. Make sure to give him a compliment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you liked the episode, leave me a note. Let me know. Maybe give me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. Share it with one of your friends. The best way you can help the show grow is by commenting down below and sharing it with other people you think that might like it. I really appreciate your support of the podcast, and please make sure that you also support my friends at Magic Mind. Again, that's magicmind.com/DanielD using my coupon code DanielD20 to get a great discount. Thanks. All right. Well, that'll do it for this episode of the Engineering Success Podcast. I'll catch you in the next one.
I'm miscommunicating. I just made a pilot, then they threw me on the stations. Now I'm not complaining. My thoughts get complicated, I cannot explain in lameness. Never losing focus because I ain't chasing payments. Still playing in the basement while I'm working on arrangements. They heard the kid in 50 countries, thank God that's amazing. But I'd rather thank Spotify, they put me on the station.